Good evening and welcome to Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, your place for a fun conversation about horror movies. Tonight we take another trip back to the VHS era of horror for an old classic, featuring Larry Drake and a variety of surgical instruments. We'll also talk about a couple of other films that you can find on free streaming services, one worth watching and one that you need to avoid. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're glad to have you here. Now pour yourself a drink and sit back, because here we go.
Hello, this is your new doctor, and I'm standing right behind you.
Oh, what the hell is that? Ever since I found my mom's Victoria's Secrets catalog, I have been dying for this.
The cutting edge of medicine. Let's open this baby up and see what it'll do.
Don't forget that a mitral valve prolapse is not that serious. Even if we have to operate, we do them all the time.
I'll try to remember that.
Always wanted to be a doctor and I never got the chance.
How's that?
I know this is going to sound a bit crazy, but has anyone here considered this guy might be Dr. Rendell's son?
Not anyone who's serious about keeping his job.
Swiped for my mom's suitcase before she and Dad left for vacation.
You expect me to wear this?
Up wide and say ah. No ah. A good physician always has the right instrument for the job. Should have used an 8-iron. Lucky for you, I've discovered the only known cure for the common cold. You win some, you lose some.
Okay, let's get into our featured film review. Tonight we're going to talk about a film called Dr. Giggles. Yes, Dr. Giggles. This is a horror slasher film that was released in the year 1992, directed by Manny Coto, and the cast includes Larry Drake, who you might remember from Dark Night of the Scarecrow or L.A. Law, and Holly Marie Combs, who you might have known from her later appearances on Charmed. Let's get into this film. So if you're going to sit down to watch Dr. Giggles, what you should expect is an above-average slasher film with a 1980s feel that never takes itself too seriously. Technically not a 1980s film released in 1992, but still part of that golden era of VHS horror on the tail end. If you like Friday the 13th, you might like Dr. Giggles. If you like films like Pieces, you might like Dr. Giggles. It's a pretty conventional, straight-up slasher film. Let's go into calibrating your sights. This is the scale we like to use. On the far left side of the scale, we have very campy films. On the far right side of the scale, we have very serious films. As always, the purpose of this scale is not to judge the quality of a film, but to tell you what your mindset needs to be going into the film if you're going to enjoy it. If you're going to sit down and watch something called Dr. Giggles, you might guess that you need to be on the campy side of the spectrum, and you would be correct. You need to be pretty all the way over there. Now, it's not an overt comedy. It's not played for laughs, with the exception of the terrible one-liners that are constantly being made by Larry Drake. Everyone plays it straight, but it's one of those things where they play it so straight, and it's obviously not meant to be taken seriously, that it's meant to be funny. So before we go any farther, let's get into our vocabulary lesson for the week. The vocabulary lesson, of course, is the part of the show where we discuss new and innovative words and phrases in an effort to stay ahead of social media bots and algorithms that would otherwise try to ban our conversation. The social media bots are always getting smarter, so we have to change our language to stay ahead of them. 2 words this week. The first word is sopranoization. Now you can probably figure this one out, but we're going to define it anyway. Sopranoization refers to the action of converting a character from an alto into a soprano through the rapid application of a bladed weapon. Yes, this is the thing that makes every man cringe, the sight of a sopranoization taking place on film. Our second term, babelectomy. Babelectomy is the action of removing a character's tongue, usually in an unpleasant and unhygienic fashion. Now, it's kind of a modified babelectomy this week. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But those are your vocabulary words for this week. Please keep these terms in mind. They will become important later in the episode. So let's get into a summary of this film. In 1957, local doctor Evan Rendell is suspected in a string of disappearances involving his patients. And yes, he is involved in the disappearances. He is, in fact, removing the patients' hearts in an effort to restore his dying wife, with the assistance of his young son, no less. Now, Dr. Rendell dies during a confrontation with the police, and the son disappears. Nobody knows what happened to the son. Until years later, 35 years later, Evan Rendell Jr. escapes from a mental hospital where he has been staying as a John Doe, so they did not know who they had. They just knew they had somebody with a high IQ who was obsessed with being a doctor. Anyway, he escapes from the mental hospital and resumes his father's work. Returns to the same hometown where his father was killed to take his bloody vengeance upon the people of the town. And of course, you have the typical collection of teenagers, so you've got your typical slasher film. Let's get into our villain profile. Our villain for this week is Evan Rendell Jr., played by the very creepy Larry Drake, who, again, you might remember from Dark Night of the Scarecrow, or Darkman, or in a non-horror related capacity, you might remember him from LA Law. He is of the slasher serial killer family. His special powers are, well, none. He's highly intelligent, but otherwise has no special powers, unless you count the ability to make terrible one-liner quips a special power. And as far as a signature weapon goes, he likes to use a variety of doctor's tools, including scalpels, bone saws, thermometers, and blood pressure cuffs. And I know there is a technical name for the blood pressure cuff, but I cannot pronounce sphygmomanometer, so we're not going to try to pronounce that. So let's get into things I liked about this film right off the bat. Technically, it's not a 1980s film, but it has the feel of a 1980s VHS era slasher movie. Most people who define the golden age of VHS era horror count the late 90s as part of it, so Dr. Giggles kind of falls under that umbrella. It never tries to take itself seriously. At no point do you watch this film and say, hey, do they mean for me to take this seriously? The answer is no, never. It keeps the action moving without getting bogged down in backstory. It does give you backstory, but it doesn't get bogged down in the backstory. It has a high kill count, a surprisingly high kill count for a first film in a horror franchise. And the number of kills involve creative use of medical instruments. So it's not just that there's a high kill count. There's a high kill count. Every one of them is different. So it's kind of interesting to watch and see how he goes about his work. And finally, Larry Drake is just creepy as Dr. Giggles. He's just creepy as all get out. So Dr. Giggles uses a variety of medical instruments to take his bloody revenge upon the hometown where his father was killed. Now, there are things that could have been better about this film. It's a film called Dr. Giggles. You have to figure there's some things about it that could have been better, and you would not be wrong. Right off the bat, this is a 1980s style slasher film. If that is not your thing, this is not the film to change your mind. The acting is 1980s slasher style acting. The production values are 1980s slasher style production values. This is not innovative in any way. So it's not going to change your mind if you're not a fan of 80s slasher films. If you're a fan of the VHS era of horror, you will enjoy this one though. The pace of the film actually seems to slow down a little bit as the climax approaches. In my notes, I make a point that as we get close to the end of the film, the pace actually seems to slow down just a little. Now, we mentioned a high kill count. There is a high kill count in this film, and so there is a lot of action going on in order to keep the kill count high, but that has to slow down towards the end when we have the climax. Larry Drake uses campy one-liners in what seems like every scene. Either that will drive you nuts or it won't. It's obviously not intended to be taken seriously. It's a campy film, but still, the one-liners kind of well, your mileage may vary whether you like them or not. There are many dislikable characters in the film, including the potential stepmother and most of the teens. So a lot of unlikable characters in the film, which makes it easier for you to root for Dr. Giggles to take his bloody vengeance upon the town. Let's get into Steve's scorecard. Right off the bat, kills. I mentioned a high kill count. I counted 17. Actually, I think I originally counted 18, but one of them turned out to not be dead at the end, so we reverted that down to 17. Bare breasts, well, none. You've got a couple of special effects, but nothing natural, so we're going to say 0 for this film. Bonesaw killings. I counted at least 2. Sopranoization, our vocabulary word from earlier, there is one of those. There is a nasal exam gone wrong. There is one temperature reading gone wrong, which is a modified babelectomy because the thermometer goes under the tongue. It is not a rectal thermometer. Stomach pump gone wrong. We get one of those. And finally, blood pressure cuff gone wrong because I can't say sphygmomanometer. There is one of those. So, 17 kills, quite a lot of kills for what was the first and say only movie in this franchise. Usually you have a smaller kill count and the kill count escalates as you get into parts 2 and part 3 of a franchise. I'm not aware of whether there was ever a sequel to Dr. Giggles, but 17 kills, so quite a high kill count. Of course, if you sit down to watch Dr. Giggles, you also get treated to some bonus features such as a leaky mitral valve. You get old codger telling backstory action. You get dad's jealous girlfriend action. Yeah, it's just kind of painful to watch. You're not going to like her. You get saxophone sexual harassment, and that means somebody sexually harassing a saxophone. That poor saxophone has to show where on the doll it was touched. You get Hall of Mirrors action. You get a kid sewed up in the corpse action. You get Physician Heal Thyself action, which I thought I was clever for calling it that. And then at the end of the scene, Larry Drake, as his one-liner, says, Physician Heal Thyself, so kind of ruined it for me. But I'd already put it in my notes, so there it is. You do get some Physician Heal Thyself action in this film. You get Puking Cop action. And finally, and most disturbingly, you get a teen with lingerie that he stole from his mother. Yes, he wants his girlfriend to wear lingerie that he stole from his mother. Really, you saw a bit of that in the preview. I am not making that up. It is disturbing. It might be the most disturbing thing about the film. He doesn't say my young hot stepmother. He doesn't say stepsister. He says, I stole this from my mother. So make of that what you will. Anyway, Steve's final score for this film, we're going to give it 2.5 paws out of 4, borderline 3. We almost gave this 3 paws out of 4. I'm going to say it's an above average borderline 3-paw slasher film from the tail end of the VHS era that plays it straight except for the one-liners, but never takes itself seriously. So, Dr. Giggles, chock full of one-liners, but otherwise never takes itself seriously, but plays it straight. 17 kills, high kill count for the first film in a franchise. So that is Dr. Giggles, and that is our featured film review for the week. And now a word from our benevolent overlords at PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror.
Oakhurst Lunatic Asylum, case number 094. Dr. Mortimer Thornfield recording. Patient 04278, Stephen Piketty Cat. Often referring to himself as Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Diagnosis, Morbus Organismus Disorder, or MOD. Observation, patient exhibits an artistically delightful and disturbed mind. The patient's pursuit of selling t-shirts and merchandise that celebrate the macabre and the horrifying has led to the diagnosis of Morbus Organismus Disorder, a condition that melds artistic madness with a twisted appreciation for the darker side of cinema. Treatment plan being that the patient's products are of a perfect embodiment of their twisted artistic vision and the unique nature of the condition. Procurement of said merchandise is recommended.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
In the southeast of America, in the quiet town of Quinton, located in Walker County, Alabama, a nightmare is about to unfold. To young friends embarking on a road trip, little did they know they were about to stumble upon a horrifying tale that would forever haunt their souls. They had no idea that their journey would lead them to the infamous Spook Trail family, deranged haunted maze makers known for their twisted ways and insatiable hunger to scare. But the question remains, will anyone make it out alive? Brace yourself, for the frights are about to begin.
Mayday! Mayday! Can you hear us? We need help. I repeat, we need help.
Oakhurst Lunatic Asylum, case number 1972. Dr. Mortimer Thornfield recording. Patients 0488593 through 0488597, known as the Psycho Bunnies. Their true identities are unknown to me at this time. Diagnosis: Eccentricus malevolentis disorder, or EMD. The patients seem to have inclinations of a twisted and unconventional artistic talents, exhibiting a disconcerting combination of insanity, disorderliness, and a penchant for the macabre. Observation: their collective behavior and unyielding commitment to selling t-shirts and merchandise that revel in the darker aspects of existence have led to the diagnosis of eccentricus malevolentis disorder, a condition that merges artistic eccentricity with a delightfully wicked sense of humor. Treatment plan: the patient's relentless obsession with creating and selling t-shirts adorned with sinister slogans, macabre imagery, and morbid humor is a defining symptom of their condition. Therefore, procurement of said merchandise is recommended.
Now, back to the show.
We've reached the end of another episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, but before we go, as is our tradition, we're going to take just a few minutes to talk about some of the other stuff I watched this week, and we're going to start off with a conversation about this film called The Hoarder. The Hoarder is a 2015 independent horror film. I found this one on Tubi, free with ads. You can probably find it elsewhere. In this film, Ella is engaged to a Wall Street banker whom she believes may be having an affair, and her fears are reinforced when she discovers that he has rented a storage unit in town without telling her. Poor Ella, but Ella soon comes up with a plan. She confides in a friend, and soon the two of them are off to the storage facility to break into the storage unit looking for the fiancé's diary. Yes, looking for the diary. Fortunately, her friend knows how to pick locks, so we're able to break into locations in this film. But what other evil is going on inside this creepy storage facility late at night? And the creepy poster gives you an idea of something is going on there. But if you want to know, you'll just have to watch the film. So, in this film, we have a very dark and creepy atmosphere. It's very successful in setting up a dark and creepy atmosphere and claustrophobic. In this particular storage facility, most of the storage units are underground, so it just has a claustrophobic feel to it. The lights in the hallways are constantly turning off and on at all the wrong times, building the suspense. And it features pretty good practical special effects as well. Now, there is loads of opening exposition that feels like a little bit too much, like they're trying a little too hard to explain to you exactly what's going on. But overall, this film did keep me entertained. Now, in this film, you're going to catch some things such as a convenient cop in a creepy location. You're going to get a horrible divorced couple who you may find yourself rooting against. You get a screwdriver to the head. You get a golf club to the head. You get unlicensed dentistry. On the pro side, this is a competent and creepy enough film that it will keep you interested until the end. On the con side, they don't even try to explain the villain's motivation in this one, so I'm not going to try to explain it to you because the movie didn't try to explain it to me. On the whole, though, the verdict is that this one is a bit above average and worth giving a try. I have watched this one before a few years back. I thought I remembered it being slightly better than what I watched, but it is above average. It is worth giving a try. You can definitely find worse things on Tubi. Now, in addition to The Hoarder, we watched another film this week. We checked out a film called The Stalker. The Stalker is a 2020 independent horror film. Again, found this on Tubi free with ads. I gave this one a try because it mentioned being inspired by 1980s slasher movies in the description. In the opening scene, a selfish financial type fires an employee based upon false pretenses so he can increase his own yearly bonus. He does the math and says, hey, if I fire this guy and keep his bonus for myself, I can pay for the house and the car. So, a year later, he and his family are being stalked by a mysterious stranger. Well, gee, do you think it could possibly be the same guy? Now, they don't show you the guy's face, so they try to keep you guessing, even though it's obvious that this is the person who is stalking them. But they try to keep you guessing as to particularly which character in the movie it is, because you haven't seen his face in the opening scene. So you get overreaction hair trigger action in this film. You get a woman who just pulls out a pistol and starts shooting for effectively no reason at all. You get dirt shoveling action. Yes, really, it's not enough for them to tell you that somebody's going to dig a hole. They show you somebody digging a hole. Yes, really, I don't know why they felt this was necessary. You get stabbings with no blood in this film. And from my notes, just a few things that I wrote down about this one. If you haven't already figured out my opinion of this film, let's go to my notes. According to my notes, wow, this is bad. It's like an hour of B-roll. And the movie is only an hour long, but seems to go on forever. So overall, on the pro side, I have seen bad movies that were longer, so at least it was over comparatively quickly. On the con side is literally everything else about this film. The verdict on this one is, do not be fooled by the description. This is an amateur film that relies on badly acted chokings and smotherings to conceal the fact that it has literally no special effects budget. Yes, I mean that literally. There is very little, if any, blood in this film. Certainly none associated with the stabbings, so the stabbings are all concealed, or the killings are performed with pillows smothering people or chokings, such that there's no blood involved, because there was no special effects team for this movie. No, 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 no. Stay away from this one. Do not be fooled by the description. It may make reference to 80s style slasher films. This is not an 80s style slasher film. This is not worth your time if you're a fan of 80s style slasher films. I don't know if this was somebody's student film or what. If it was a student film, then I apologize for being so hard on you, but my God, there's really no good reason to sit and watch this one. So that is The Stalker, and that is some of the other stuff I watched this week. That brings us to the end of another episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Thank you so much for joining us. We're glad you're here. If you did enjoy the show, then please check us out on social media. You can find Steve the Cat on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, or whatever it is they're calling Twitter now. So please stop by and hit that subscribe button. Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat is available exclusively through the PBDC Collective Incorporated, now legally incorporated and still your heartbeat of horror. You can find us on the web at psychobunnydc.com, or you can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Rumble, and Discord. Now, the Discord site is for members only, so if you're interested, please go to psychobunnydc.com and click the link for an invitation. We'll be back again in 2 weeks to talk about some more horror films, so we hope to see you then. It's sure to be a lot of fun, so make sure to join us every other Monday night at 10 p.m. That's all for now, so until next time, thank you for joining us, and have a great week.